this is the last video on the Mondstadt aristocracy. Today's video is about the Gladiator, specifically the Gladiator who was a slave to Eberhard and fought Vennessa in the arena. And in addition, it's also about the wielder of Crescent Pike, the Blue-Eyed Spear Witch, who also was involved with Eberhard and Parsifal. So in this particular case, I would highly recommend watching the Eberhard and Parsifal videos if you have not already, since they're pretty relevant to this. So first off, with the Gladiator, disclaimer, he was not that important, which is kind of sad to say, but it's pretty true, because Eberhard didn't care, and I guess Vennessa didn't care. Well, she cared, but it was not relevant to her overall story. But it's worth hearing about him, because he has a depressing story. Anyway, so the Gladiator was a slave of Eberhard in the past, and eventually he was a gladiator for a very long time, it seems, because he ended up fighting Vennessa in what would have been his last battle, and if he won it, he would have gone free, just like Vennessa was promised her freedom if she happened to win, the battle against Ursa the Drake. So, in this case, the Gladiator was fighting against Vennessa, and he did pretty well in the past. But then because it was Vennessa and she was fated to win, okay, he was very skilled, and she eventually won against him in the battle. So this is where the lore gets a little bit unclear. Okay, it's clear, but it is confusing at a first glance. So if we look at Gladiator's Finale, which is an artifact set about him, it details the specifics of, not the specifics, it details his battle with Vennessa. And it also likes to talk about how in the end he was free and his heart was a bird and other very flowery metaphorical language, and how she refused to kill him, blah, 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 blah. It turns out from contextually, it seems more likely that she refused to kill him like a slave and just killed him with grace, which we're getting to in a second. His weapon, Deathmatch, is about the battle with Vennessa as well. And it starts off pretty innocently, and then it splits into what are essentially two separate timelines. One in which he wins against Vennessa, and one in which he loses against Vennessa. In the first one, where he wins against Vennessa, it's with Eberhard, and Eberhard looks down, and he's proud of him, and the Gladiator decides to stay with Eberhard, because Eberhard, in this imaginary dream, actually likes him. As we find out, that's not true. In the real world, which we know is the real world because of something we're getting to in a minute here, in the real world, the Gladiator dies against Vennessa, and he loses in the battle. And in his dying moments, he looks up, and he looks for Eberhard, and Eberhard is gone, because Eberhard honestly didn't care, but the Gladiator thought he did. Because he was, blinded, I suppose. Anyway, and Eberhard was very manipulative, and very good at, getting what he wanted. Anyway, so the Gladiator loses against Vennessa. We also know this, and we have it confirmed by an outside source, because it's in Luther's Ancient Investigation Journal number 2, where he talks about how Eberhard's Gladiator was killed by a red-haired Reaper, which we know is Vennessa, and also because we know Vennessa, lived, and ergo won the battle. That helps too. So, the Gladiator dies, and this inconveniently doesn't really have any impact on the greater scheme of things. On the other hand, the Blue-Eyed Spear Witch, the Death Witch, this Crescent Pike Witch, whatever you want to call her, she doesn't really have any official title, is more important to the story of Parsifal and Eberhard. So, her story begins, essentially, as what is most likely a slave in a noble household, because she refers at one point to her master in Heart's Desire Volume 3, Sapphire, which is seemingly a fictional book, but it is surprisingly accurate. At minimum, she was probably working in an aristocrat's household, because according to Wine and Song, what happens is that Parsifal, who's basically Robin Hood, but with, no murder and no violence whatsoever, decides to steal this, silver goblet, because the sapphire in it matches her eyes, gives a sapphire to her, blah, 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 blah. This turns out, as you might expect, which is to say she gets discovered, and, oh, look, you have this stolen gemstone. I wonder, what should we do with you? What in the world? As we found out at Alley Hunter, she got branded, and as a result of this, she was lovers with Parsifal, and now she is understandably upset with Parsifal. Inconveniently, Parsifal gets exiled from the city due to Eberhard's machinations. We know this because the Spear Witch dies later, but in Heart of Depth, Parsifal reminisces about her, and he is like, oh, I wonder if she's still out there, thinking and searching and whatever. So he didn't know she was dead. After Parsifal gets exiled, Eberhard goes to her and asks to learn her spear art, because apparently, at some point, she learned how to see death. By death, I mean that she learned how to see people's fatal flaws, essentially, and how to best kill them. And when she created the Crescent Pike, she also essentially imbued these traits into the Crescent Pike. Now, it's unclear whether this was before or after Parsifal left. I believe it's an alley hunter that it meant, perhaps it's White in Song, that it mentions that she was a justice with, like, she killed the vile, blah, 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 spear wielding, etc. Which could imply that, like, before Parsifal left, she was also using her spear then, but then she got caught with the gemstone and everything went down from there. In any case, it doesn't really matter because Eberhart finds her and asks her to train him in the art of the spear because he's planning to use that to overthrow the nobility. Interestingly, in Favonius Lance, it mentions actually that he sought her out in order to learn the art of the spear from her to find the fatal loophole in her arts and then kill her. So if he did know of the relation between her and Parsifal, it's theoretically possible that Eberhart specifically went after her in order to kill her. I mean, it's not like Eberhard would ever be jealous of somebody and murder somebody over jealousy. Ingbert wants a word with you. In any case, at first, according to President Pike, she didn't have any fatal flaws herself, but then it turns out fatal flaws are born out of a fear of death, and fear of death results from caring about people, and caring about people is love, and she loved Parsifal, and then that ended up with her dying in Eberhard's hands. So she died in the end. Eberhard got away. I mean, he might have also killed her to just, like, cover up the fact that he was learning the spear, or he might have sought her out on purpose to kill her because Parsifal and Eberhard was not the nicest dude. I mean, tragic backstory, but not the nicest dude. Anyway, that is about all I can think of for them. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, interestingly, White in Song details a fictional account of what happened to the Spear Witch at Parsifal that ends happily. Inconveniently, we know that in, quote, real life, unquote, at least in universe, it did not end happily, but it's a fun tidbit, so if you ever feel like being less sad about their relationship, you can always go read White in Song and pretend it's totally 100% true and never look at Heart's Desire Volume 3. That's it for today. Thanks!